Full House may have redefined the family sitcom, warming hearts across America for 8 unforgettable seasons, but behind the laughter and life lessons was a cast marked by heartbreak, addiction, and tragedy. Fame did not save them. In fact, it pushed many toward endings darker than any dramatic moment the Tanner family ever faced. Nearly 31 years after the final episode aired, their stories remain so haunting that once you hear them, you'll never watch this beloved classic the same way again. The white picket fence of that San Francisco Victorian house concealed demons that would follow these actors long after the studio lights dimmed. What happened when the cameras stopped rolling reveals a Hollywood nightmare disguised as America's most wholesome show. Bob Saget, Danny Tanner. Robert Lane Saget was born on May 17, 1956, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He was 30 years old when he stepped into the role of Danny Tanner, the clean freak widowed father who held the Tanner household together with unconditional love and an obsession with vacuuming. Saget was a stand-up comedian trying to break into television, and Full House became his golden ticket to mainstream success. But behind the squeaky clean father figure America adored was a man carrying profound grief that shaped every moment of his life. Saget's family was devastated by tragedy long before he became famous. His sister Gay died of scleroderma at age 47, a cruel autoimmune disease that hardens the skin and organs. Another sister, Andrea, died of a brain aneurysm at just 32 years old. These losses haunted Saget deeply, transforming him into a man who wore comedy as armor against unbearable pain. Off-screen, his stand-up routines were shockingly vulgar and dark, a stark contrast to his wholesome TV persona. This split identity became both his coping mechanism and his prison. As the years passed, Saget's career became a constant battle between the family-friendly image that made him famous and the edgier comedian he truly was. After Full House ended in 1995, he struggled to escape typecasting, taking on raunchier projects to prove his range. His marriage to Sherry Kramer, with whom he had 3 daughters, ended in divorce in 1997. Though he remarried in 2018 to Kelly Rizzo, friends noted he carried a melancholy that never fully lifted. He channeled his grief into advocacy, raising millions for scleroderma research in his sister's memory. But the weight of loss never left his shoulders. Bob Saget died on January 9, 2022, at the age of 65 from blunt head trauma sustained in an accidental fall in his Orlando hotel room. The man who spent decades making millions laugh died alone, his injuries so severe that medical examiners questioned how he simply went to sleep without seeking help. A tragic fate for someone who dedicated his life to bringing joy to others, while quietly carrying more sorrow than most could bear. John Stamos, Jesse Katsopoulos. John Philip Stamos was born on August 19, 1963 in Cypress, California. He was 23 years old when he stepped into the role of Jesse Katsopoulos, the Elvis-obsessed, leather jacket-wearing uncle whose charm and mullet made him a teen heartthrob. Stamos arrived on Full House already famous from his role on General Hospital, and the show catapulted him into superstardom. Yet beneath the confidence and devastating good looks was a man struggling with the crushing pressure of perfection and an addiction that nearly destroyed him. Stamos became Hollywood's golden boy, seemingly immune to the pitfalls that claimed so many child stars. He dated some of the most beautiful women in entertainment, married model Rebecca Romijn in 1998, and maintained a successful career long after Full House ended. But the marriage crumbled by 2005, and Stamos spiraled into alcohol abuse that he kept hidden behind his megawatt smile. Through the 2000s and 2010s, Stamos's drinking became an open secret in Hollywood. In 2015, he was arrested for DUI in Beverly Hills, a humiliating public exposure of the demons he'd been battling privately for years. He entered rehab, finally confronting the addiction that had shadowed his entire adult life. Stamos later revealed that his alcoholism stemmed from deep insecurities and fear of failure, feelings that fame had amplified rather than soothed. The pressure to maintain his image as the cool, confident heartthrob became suffocating. Stamos survived where others didn't, finding sobriety and eventually marrying actress Caitlin McHugh in 2018, with whom he had a son. But his journey through addiction revealed the devastating force of Hollywood's expectations, even for those who seem to have everything. He carries the scars of years lost to alcohol, a reminder that the industry that celebrated him offered little protection when he needed it most. Dave Coulier, Joey Gladstone. David Allen Coulier was born on September 21st, 1959 in St. Clair Shores, Michigan. He was 27 years old when he stepped into the role of Joey Gladstone, the goofy comedian and Danny's best friend whose cartoon voices and childlike energy provided endless comic relief. Coulier was a working comedian and voice actor who saw Full House as his big break into primetime television. But behind the Bullwinkle impressions and cut it out, catchphrase was a man marked by addiction, failed relationships, and the devastating realization that his biggest role might also be his last. Coulier's personal life became tabloid fodder when he famously dated singer Alanis Morissette in the early 1990s. Many believe her angry breakup album, Jagged Little Pill, including the scathing song You Oughta Know, was written about him. The relationship's bitter ending revealed a side of Coulier the public never saw on Full House, emotionally unavailable and struggling with his own demons. As the years passed, Coulier's career stalled significantly after Full House ended. While his castmates found varying degrees of success, he largely disappeared from the spotlight, relegated to voice work and small appearances. His first marriage ended in divorce, and he struggled with alcoholism throughout the 2000s. Coulier later admitted he was a heavy drinker for years, using alcohol to cope with the disappointment of being forever known as that guy from Full House, rather than the serious comedian he wanted to be. Coulier eventually achieved sobriety on January 1st, 2020, marking a personal victory after decades of struggle. He's now married to photographer Melissa Bring and advocates for addiction recovery. But his story remains one of Hollywood's cruel ironies. Beloved by millions for bringing laughter to their living rooms, yet privately drowning in alcohol and disappointment, forgotten by an industry that once celebrated him. The shadows of addiction and irrelevance are a tragic fate for someone who gave so much joy to others. Jodie Sweetin, Stephanie Tanner. Jodie Lee Ann Sweetin was born on January 19, 1982 in Los Angeles, California. She was just 5 years old when she stepped into the role of Stephanie Tanner, the precocious middle daughter whose catchphrase, "How rude," became a cultural phenomenon. Sweetin was a natural performer who stole scenes from seasoned actors, becoming America's little sister. Yet beneath the adorable gap-toothed smile and blonde pigtails was a childhood being stolen by fame, setting the stage for one of Hollywood's most devastating falls from grace. Sweetin's parents struggled with addiction, and though she was raised by her uncle after age 14, the damage was done. When Full House ended in 1995, 13-year-old Jodie faced an identity crisis that would consume the next 2 decades of her life. She was famous but had no idea who she was without Stephanie Tanner. Through her teenage years and 20s, Sweetin descended into a nightmare of addiction that nearly killed her. She began drinking at 14, moved to drugs by 15, and by her early 20s was addicted to methamphetamine and cocaine. Her memoir, Unsweetened, reveals the horrifying depths of her addiction, using crystal meth while pregnant, losing custody of her children, and hitting rock bottom so many times she lost count. She cycled through 3 divorces before age 30, each relationship collapsing under the weight of her addiction. The industry that made her famous turned away, and she became another cautionary tale of child stardom gone wrong. As the years crawled forward, Sweetin fought for sobriety with determination that bordered on miraculous. She entered rehab multiple times, relapsed repeatedly, but eventually found lasting recovery. By the time Fuller House premiered in 2016, she had reclaimed her life, becoming an advocate for addiction recovery and reconciling with her daughters. But the scars remain visible. Years of her life lost, relationships destroyed, and the haunting knowledge of how close she came to becoming another Hollywood tragedy. Sweetin is alive today, but her story serves as a devastating reminder of how child fame can poison an entire life. The girl who made millions laugh carried the weight of addiction and trauma that the cameras never captured, surviving against odds that claimed so many others. Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, Michelle Tanner. Mary-Kate Olsen and Ashley Fuller Olsen were born on June 13, 1986 in Sherman Oaks, California. They were just 9 months old when they began sharing the role of Michelle Tanner, the adorable youngest daughter whose "You got it, dude" melted hearts nationwide. The twins became the show's breakout stars, launching an empire that made them millionaires before they could read. But behind the matching outfits and coordinated cuteness was a childhood manufactured entirely for profit, creating psychological wounds that would manifest in heartbreaking ways. The Olsen twins never had a chance at normal childhood. They were commodities, working infants who spent their formative years on set, passing between them a single role while their parents built a billion-dollar brand. By the time Full House ended, they were 9 years old and already running a multimedia empire. Movies, merchandise, magazines. They were children playing at being businesswomen, robbed of any semblance of a normal life. Through their teenage years, the cracks began showing. Mary-Kate developed anorexia nervosa, her skeletal frame shocking fans when she appeared publicly in the early 2000s. She entered treatment in 2004 at just 18 years old, but the eating disorder shadowed her for years. Both twins retreated from acting, focusing on fashion design and desperately seeking privacy after spending their entire lives in the spotlight. They became eerily thin, chain-smoking, emotionally guarded women who looked decades older than their years. The pressure of being perfect had crushed them. As the years passed, darker revelations emerged. Mary-Kate became entangled in the 2008 death of actor Heath Ledger, who died of an accidental overdose in an apartment owned by her. Though never implicated in any wrongdoing, the tragedy revealed her connection to Hollywood's dangerous underbelly. Both twins have essentially disappeared from public life, refusing to participate in Fuller House and rarely giving interviews. They've become reclusive fashion designers, their faces altered by what many speculate is excessive plastic surgery and the physical toll of years of eating disorders. The Olsen twins are alive but represent one of Hollywood's cruelest experiments. What happens when you manufacture child stars from infancy? Their billions cannot buy back the childhood stolen from them, cannot erase the eating disorders and psychological damage wrought by decades of objectification. A tragic fate for babies who never chose fame but were sold to it before they could walk. Candace Cameron Bure, DJ Tanner. Candace Helene Cameron was born on April 6, 1976 in Panorama City, California. She was 10 years old when she stepped into the role of DJ Tanner, the responsible eldest daughter whose teenage struggles with boys, peer pressure, and self-image became relatable storylines for millions of young viewers. Cameron was already a working child actress, but Full House made her a household name. Yet beneath the role model persona was a young woman struggling with bulimia, faith-based guilt, and the suffocating pressure of maintaining a perfect image. Cameron has spoken openly about developing an eating disorder during Full House's run, binging and purging as she tried to control her changing teenage body under the scrutiny of millions. The show's wholesome image demanded perfection, and she internalized that pressure in the most destructive way. At 22, she married Russian NHL player Valery Burin, promptly disappeared from Hollywood, seemingly escaping the industry's toxicity. Through the following decades, Cameron reinvented herself as a conservative Christian spokesperson, but this new identity brought its own controversies and pain. She became a polarizing figure, her outspoken religious and political views alienating former fans and co-stars. Reports emerged of tension on the Fuller House set, with Cameron's inflexibility regarding her beliefs creating conflict. Her memoir revealed depression and identity struggles as she tried to reconcile her childhood fame with her adult faith, admitting to periods of deep unhappiness despite her seemingly perfect life. Cameron remains alive and working, primarily in faith-based films and as a talking head on conservative media. But her journey reveals the devastating force of childhood fame combined with rigid ideological thinking. She survived Full House only to trap herself in a different kind of performance, the perfect Christian wife and mother, that has isolated her from much of Hollywood and former friends. The girl who played the perfect daughter has spent her life chasing an impossible standard of perfection, a cruel twist for someone who was never allowed to simply be human and flawed. Andrea Barber, Kimmy Gibbler. Andrea Laura Barber was born on July 3, 1976 in Los Angeles, California. She was 11 years old when she stepped into the role of Kimmy Gibbler, DJ's annoying next-door neighbor whose outlandish fashion and clueless personality provided comic relief. Barber was a child actress who stumbled into one of television's most memorable supporting roles, becoming the character everyone loved to hate. But behind the wacky outfits and exaggerated mannerisms was a young woman who would walk away from Hollywood entirely, unable to cope with the mental health demons that fame had awakened. When Full House ended in 1995, 19-year-old Andrea Barber simply vanished. She enrolled at Whittier College, earned a degree in English, and became an assistant to the director of Whittier's Office of International Programs. For over 15 years, she lived as a private citizen, and almost no one from her past life knew why she disappeared so completely. Through those silent years, Barber was battling severe anxiety and depression that she later revealed had made her acting career unbearable. The pressure of performing, the constant scrutiny, and the loss of anonymity had triggered mental health issues that made continuing in Hollywood impossible. She married and had 2 children, but her marriage ended in divorce in 2014, compounding her struggles. She described feeling lost, depressed, and disconnected from herself for years, the price paid for childhood fame that nobody warned her about. As the years turned, Barber slowly reemerged, returning for Fuller House in 2016 and speaking publicly about her mental health struggles. She's become an advocate for anxiety and depression awareness, but her story remains one of Hollywood's quieter tragedies. She lost 15 years of her life to mental illness, directly linked to her childhood in the spotlight, years she can never reclaim. The industry that celebrated her offered little protection when she needed it most, abandoning her to fight her demons alone. Barber survived, but at tremendous cost. She represents the countless former child actors who simply disappear, their silence speaking volumes about the psychological toll of growing up on camera. A heartbreaking decline into obscurity for someone who brought so much laughter to millions, only to find that her own happiness was the sacrifice required. Nearly 31 years after Full House aired its final episode, it remains a beloved family sitcom that defined a generation's childhood. Yet the real lives behind it are far more tragic than any dramatic moment in the Tanner family's wholesome San Francisco home. From Bob Saget's lonely death after decades carrying unbearable grief, to the Olsen twins' stolen childhood and eating disorders, from Jodie Sweetin's near-fatal addiction to Andrea Barber's complete disappearance into mental illness, every member of the cast carried a story the cameras never captured. The white picket fence concealed addiction, eating disorders, depression, and the devastating force of fame on vulnerable young lives. These were real people crushed by an industry that packaged them as perfect while offering no support when they crumbled. Which journey struck you the most? Comment below and don't forget to subscribe as we uncover the forgotten truths behind Hollywood's greatest legends.